This is the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, episode 20. I'm your host, Steve, at Fantasy Ladder. This podcast is brought to you by the IDP Guys Network from idpguys.org. So, welcome back once again, my fantasy football friends and family. Let's climb the ladder of fantasy football together. So, today we are continuing with our fan base series. We're going to be diving into the Kansas City Chiefs. And just to remind you, if you have been with us along on this journey so far, you know the drill, but we are bringing on fans and content creators from the fantasy football community to discuss their favorite teams. I just may not be as plugged into the team as they are. My favorite team is the Eagles. So today, obviously, we're covering the Chiefs. I know a little bit about the Chiefs. I don't know as much as my guest here. So we are going to bring him on in just a second. Then, if this is your first time listening, welcome. I hope you enjoyed. And if you do enjoy this content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'd be great. So you can enjoy this show and the other great shows that IDP Guys has to offer. So without further ado, we are going to bring on our guest today. Our guest today is Axton Harding. You can find him on Twitter at Harding_3. He is a fellow writer and content contributor at IDP Guys. He is a very active and helpful member of the Discord through the IDP Guys subscription. And shout out to the Creator League, a Red Division mate of mine. Axton, how you doing? And how long have you been a Chiefs fan?
Hey Steve, I'm doing all right. I'm doing pretty good, staying busy, but I've been a Chiefs fan since about the early 2000s. As early as I can remember was probably the Trent Green, Priest Holmes, Tony G days, where you like to think the good old days weren't winning any championships or anything quite back then, but
But
since
definitely
so I
had some
guess
fantasy football studs though
yeah.
from that
Oh
era for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I probably started fantasy more when I was like 14, not too long after the early 2010s or something. So I
Okay.
didn't quite get to dabble into any of that, but I got like the Calvin Johnson era and things like that. So
So you missed the Dwayne Bowe years in the fantasy
I
realm, or was that around that time
I
frame?
might have been. I think it was right around that time. I don't think I ever got to dip into the Dwayne Bowe pool though.
Well, lucky for you because that just was years of high expectations and oh my god, that's so crazy. That just came off the top of my head. I haven't thought about Dwayne Bowe in probably 6 years, so
I
that's so
honestly was
funny.
thinking about that earlier. I'm glad you said something. That's hilarious.
That is
Yeah.
too much. Oh my gosh, that's really funny. Yeah. So when I think the Chiefs, obviously you think about Priest Holmes, you think about Larry Johnson, you think
Hmm.
about Jamal Charles, of course, and now we have this awesome new era with Patrick Mahomes, obviously. So a lot of fantasy goodness is coming out of the Chiefs at this point in time. Now, for the purpose of this show, you're going to help me walk through the 2021 season summary. We're going to work our way through free agency, their NFL draft selections, and then take a look ahead to the 2022 season, look at potentially how they're going to do in real life as well as in the fantasy realm once again. So, just going to start with a summary of the season. Um, the Chiefs finished with a 12-5 record. They were the AFC West champions. They finished top five in points and passing yards per game. After a mightily successful season, they boasted another deep playoff run with a wild and an unbelievably clutch effort to beat the Bills in overtime. But the run ended, unfortunately, in the AFC Championship game, falling to the surprisingly surging Bengals in overtime once again. So, Axton, I want to hear your thoughts on the new overtime rules, and what do you believe would be the most ideal method for avoiding ties?
I'd probably have to agree with the change that they made. I feel like in about every other sport, or most sports, anyways, both teams have that extra or that opportunity to counter a score in extra innings, extra time, overtime, whatever you want to call it. So I would have to agree with the change. I kind of feel like it should have been something that, should have kind of been there all along. And I would argue that it should be something I would think they would include with the regular season as well. I don't see why anything should change there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think as a little tested out, like test run, I think it makes sense to implement it for the games that matter most. But I'm just thinking
Hmm.
like every game's important. It's such a short season. You might as well do it
Exactly.
for everything, you know.
They're the ones that
Um,
determine the postseason anyway, so,
That's right. And the seeding and everything else.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I think I like the rule in principle. Um, I'm not sure if it's as ideal as like the college system. I'm not sure what is the perfect system, but I definitely think it's a step in the right direction. It's definitely one that I think was long overdue.
Mhm.
Obviously you were on the winning side of that game against the Bills, and I just recently did a Bills episode, and they,
Yep.
were glad about the change, but it's still like that
Still
still
burns.
stings that
Yep.
they are like the example that set it was like the final
Mhm.
like straw that broke the camel's back to like finally make the league think about changing it, and then successfully changing it. Yeah, so
Mhm.
maybe a little bitter, on their
Yep.
end, but still, you know, it just was like clutch moment after clutch moment in that game. It just, from an objective football standpoint, was just one of the most memorable games
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
I've seen, easily. Obviously in the last year, and then maybe in the last 10 years. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe
Mhm.
other than like the Eagles Super Bowl win for me personally, but that's neither here nor there.
Right.
But yeah, just was just a fantastic game. I mean, even just the 13 seconds that Mahomes drove down the field just to, in that final time,
The
it's just insane
notorious.
to me. It's amazing. It's
Mhm.
amazing. Um,
Yeah, Bills fans shouldn't feel off too awful bad though. We kind of got it. They got even the next game. We kind of blew about every opportunity we had against the Bengals, and they deserved that win after how we played. So, yeah,
yeah.
we're still feeling it too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, um, kind of going like the last three seasons here for the Chiefs. They come off the Super Bowl win, then they have a Super Bowl loss, and they have a loss in the AFC Championship game. Really deep playoff runs, obviously very good success. So, with all that success and some of the changes to the team, which we'll dive into in just a bit, what is your level of anticipation like for this season following that disappointing end to an overall great season? Are you pretty hyped for football in general? Is it a little? Are you a little extra hype? Because you want to get back to where you were, or with the revamped AFC West division in general? What is your level of anticipation like?
I'm not sure how you felt when Andy Reid was in Philadelphia, but I think with about any squad that he's given with regard to at least the level of talent that he's kind of got to work with, I'm pretty excited for this year. I'm not sure exactly what's going to come of it. I kind of have an idea that will most likely spread the ball around quite a bit more with the additions that they've made and whatnot. But Andy Reid is very good about giving his players those roles and those effective roles, and picking the people that are perfect for those roles. And he's got a lot of weapons to use and get and assign roles to, and he's good at coming up with those trick plays when they matter, and shifting the momentum. He's all about that, and just for that very reason, I'm just excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, as an Eagles fan, I have nothing but respect for Coach Reed. I mean, without his presence in the organization or in the franchise, I guess, you know, he has a major hand in the success of that team. Like, they are like one of the more like winningest teams over the history of the league, a lot because of him. Now there are little things to be picky that were a little irritating. Like, sometimes I sort of felt like he was like trying to like outsmart everyone a little too often.
Hmm.
A lot of those trick plays and things I always sometimes felt was a little unnecessary. Just like, you have McNabb, you have Westbrook, like, don't overthink it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yep.
But just an incredible football mind, a great coach, like a good like players coach and everything else. So yeah, no, I know there are Philadelphia fans who don't share the same sentiment as me, but I just look at like the big picture, especially with how much time has passed. I really
Hmm.
do just recognize, just for how long he was there, how good they were, and that kind of stability just is pretty rare. I mean, you have your situations of like coaching stability, like with Sean Payton in New Orleans, and
Hmm.
obviously not anymore, but or like Bill Belichick in New England, Mike Tomlin, and Pittsburgh and all this, Harbaugh and Baltimore, but pretty rare, right? It is kind
Hmm.
of like a revolving door sometimes for some of these teams. So And Reed just has been extremely successful with the Chiefs pretty much from day one. So it's pretty remarkable. So I got
Hmm.
nothing but love for Coach Reed, for sure. Uh, but yeah, so I
Definitely been
think
one of those head coaches that has always been top of the charts, and he's always been produced a competition-worthy team. Someone that's always going to put up a fight. They may not always win, your championships year after year, but you're definitely not gonna just walk all over him with whatever team he's got.
not for sure. I think to have like the safety of a talent like Patrick Mahomes, that can sometimes cover up some of those little flaws that Andy
Hmm.
Reid still does have, and maybe still maintains. I know another criticism of his time in Philadelphia was like a matter of like time management in the game and like calling timeouts
Hmm.
kind of at funky times. I remember there
Yeah.
was a game in the Alex Smith era against the Patriots in the playoffs, and they took like 10 minutes. It was a really long drive, and they got a touchdown, but then there was like no time left to like try to
Hmm.
stop the Patriots and then score again. So it just was one of those examples where you wanted to like,
Hmm.
I'm glad you scored, but like, why take up 9, 10 minutes of the game
Yeah.
clock?
Yeah.
So
I'm not gonna lie. I found some a player or two here and there just watching them through the last couple of years where you're just like, right now? Why this now? You know what I mean? You're just
yeah,
worried about that timing.
that's
But that's
right.
all
Yeah.
right. I think that's something that everybody's kind of got to work out. I'm sure he's working on his own things to be better as a coach, and I think a lot of that will come with just more time with the players and things like that.
For sure, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's such a great recipe for success. You got a great coach, you have a phenomenal quarterback. So I think, like the level of anticipation for any Kansas City Chiefs should be very high. It should remain high
Hmm.
as long as Mahomes is in town, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so just want to go over some of the changes to the team, going through what the Chiefs were able to bring in and unfortunately not be able to retain through free agency. Some of the key losses, obviously wide receiver Tyreek Hill, big loss there. Also did not retain Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson, kind of like role players who are always on the fantasy radar just simply because Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
But they are out of town. They were not able to retain safety Tyron Matthew or Daniel Sorensen, like kind of longtime starters for the team there. Running back Darrell Williams, kind of an underrated talent. Cornerbacks Javarius Ward and Mike Hughes. Um, my lasting memory of Mike Hughes in a Chiefs uniform is when Gabe Davis literally made him fall over on one of those touchdown catches in that playoff game.
That
Like
was
man,
wild.
he just fakes to the outside and then just posts, and Mike Hughes is just on the ground. It's like, man,
Hmm.
that's just a rough one. And again, I've never played football, so I really can't say. I'm sure I would have been like, wait, I got who knows? I have like no body control. But I mean, like that's just is my lasting memory of him in a Chiefs jersey, unfortunately, as well as missing out on linebacker Melvin Ingram. He was kind of like a 1 year or like a midseason addition, I think it was, just
Hmm.
try to get him over the top for the playoff run. And then defensive tackle Jaron Reed. Now, with the additions, some pretty exciting ones here. They were able to bring in wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster from Pittsburgh and Marquez Valdez-Scantling from Green Bay. Brought in Ronald Jones, and they did retain Jarek McKinnon. And then they brought in safety Justin Reed from the Texans, and then brought in defensive end Carlos Dunlap. Anyone I missed out on there, or is that pretty much the
I think
more
that pretty well
significant?
covers it. The only other thing I maybe would add is they did retain a couple of some defensive depth, kind of all over. Re-signed a few people. They did sign a new offensive lineman and re-signed a couple of offensive linemen to bolster or to kind of just really maintain that line. So,
Oh,
uh,
perfect. Okay.
and they even drafted one, I think, but we'll get into all that.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think you covered
So
it.
yeah, thank you. Okay, I just want to make sure. Um, so I basically just want to hear your thoughts on the free agency moves, specifically on the loss of Tyreek Hill. Do you think that has been an overstated or an understated for you? And how do you think his absence will affect Mahomes?
I guess I want to say overstated. I feel like everybody thinks that uh, that this is going to be just a big blow to the Chiefs. And I mean, but at the same time, people are valuing, excuse me, ranking Patrick Mahomes in the top 5 QBs, but yet nobody's wanting to draft any of his wide receivers in the top 30. So to me, it's like people really think that it's just going to be Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey out here, making it to the playoffs all by themselves. I think that these additions are going to be nice. Uh, give them a little bit more depth instead of having that elite wide receiver one that'll take a step down and have a couple of mid tiers and an early a young guy and uh, rookie picks and uh, I just think the depth is going to go a long way, a lot more so than last year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for I think definitely from a real life football standpoint, it very well may just be business as usual. I initially was thinking like, boy, like did this might actually kind of hurt Mahomes' upside a bit. Cause I'm actually very intrigued to see what Mahomes will be like without Tyreek Hill because there's
Hmm.
just so many of these like amazing, like long touchdown passes. I mean, he just was a really huge part of the offense. And you
Hmm.
try to stop him, then you got to account for Kelsey. It's like it would make a defensive coordinator like dizzy, you
Right.
know. Um, I guess over the summer I have warmed up to Juju a bit. I guess it's
Hmm.
just because of it's like the opposite effect of like the recency bias, right? It's like the opposite because we
Hmm.
haven't seen him play in a while. I may just be forgetting like what kind of an impact he can make because he was never in like a primary role in Pittsburgh. He was like kind of the wide receiver two to Antonio Brown, and then he started off the season like maybe one or two games and he was out for the year, you know, then it was just like the like Deontay Johnson show and everything else.
Hmm.
But
He did
so
finish wide receiver 8 in 2018 with 1,400 receiving yards. So he's got that potential. He's got the capability to soak up, a large portion, if not all. Obviously it's not going to be all 159 vacated targets, but a good chunk. And that leaves, I think he's still going to leave plenty for Mahomes to pass around. You talked about earlier, Mahomes has wide receivers out there. He's getting them the ball, and if the wide receivers can get open more so than your Byron Pringles and Demarcus Robinsons, uh, I think spreading the ball is just going to work in their favor this year, and I think Avery's going to love it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now I'm glad you brought that up about that strong season he had because that is what his potential is. You know, we
Hmm.
know what it is, but it just we have just haven't seen that in a while. So that's
Right?
maybe
No,
just
you're
why
right.
me
You're right.
personally am like kind of like forgetting about that. You know, but
Hmm.
that's
Yep,
more
you're
on
right.
me. But again, it is Patrick Mahomes. It's not
Hmm.
Ben Roethlisberger, who again at that time was better than what he was the last two seasons. You know what I mean, for
Hmm.
sure. So it is a very intriguing situation. But I'm glad that you think maybe losing Tyreek just isn't that big of an issue. You know,
Well, Chiefs
um,
fans have known for, I mean, Tyreek's been with us since he was drafted, correct, in 2017. We've known for a while that he or Kelsey was going to inevitably depart. We just weren't going to be able to afford them long term past, especially. I didn't know if it was going to happen this year. A little surprised that, of the timing of it. I guess it was after this, it was kind of mid post or mid off season. uh, but we like I say, we've all known that it's kind of been one of those things where one of those guys is going to leave, and we're going to have to move on eventually. And I think that Andy Reid has done a good job of preparing Mahomes for it by spreading the ball out to all of his receivers, even before bulking up that depth.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting. Even back to his years with the Eagles, what Donovan McNabb had at his disposal was not
Hmm.
very good for a long time. Then the one year that they bring in Terrell Owens, he was like the best wide receiver they'd
Hmm.
had in probably decades at that point. I mean, so now, you know, he has Mahomes, who is just already just light years ahead of what Donovan McNabb's peak was, you know, but still, you know, he was successful with much lesser offensive skill positions in Philadelphia than what the Chiefs have at their disposal now. So I think you're right about that. I think
Hmm.
the team itself will be still able to keep it up. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's good. Now, were there any other positions or specific players you were hoping that the team would have signed, or were you pretty just good with what they brought in?
No, I mean, I was kind of hoping for maybe some more veterans to come in and solidify that defensive secondary, honestly, as
Okay.
opposed to the way they went about it and kind of going all in the rookie draft. I would have liked to have seen maybe another vet go there, but the way that it all played out, they filled holes where they needed to fill holes and whatnot. I would have also say I was kind of hoping A Rob was going to be landing in
Yeah,
DC
yeah.
pre Tyreek trade. Maybe a Laviska Chenault was kind of somebody I was thinking what had trade rumors going around. I guess he's staying in Jacksonville, but it's just a couple of names that I had thought about early on in the season. Now I'm not complaining at all about Juju, and I think MVS is kind of going to play like a light Tyreek role in not maybe taking as many targets or being heavily targeted all game long, but as far as that deep ball for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, kind of like he did with Deshaun Jackson and Philly and things like that. So uh, I, I'm definitely pleased with how they came out of free agency.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it'll be very fascinating. Because you have to respect his game because he had flashing moments there in Green Bay. So again, it just is going to be just another difficult offense to try to game plan for.
Hmm.
So I'm just am very intrigued to see how it's exactly going to look and just see again if we can see all these guys up to their potential. Which of course, with Patrick Mahomes throwing them the ball, definitely a possibility. Now, another one that I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on is Ronald Jones. So he's been kind of a polarizing player and prospect. The promise is always there, but it never really seems to come into like fruition.
Hmm.
And you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who has had kind of mixed success, a little bit of injury. I guess last year's a little bit banged up in this. So are you excited for Ronald Jones? Do you think he's just like a guy that's just there to kind of be a depth piece, or any thoughts on that?
I haven't snagged very many shares of him. I would like to because I am actually excited about his. Everybody's he can't catch the ball and he's not any good at this or he's not any good at that. But the fact of the matter is the man outplayed Leonard Fournette in his first year in Tampa Bay and took the reins of that entire offense and ran with it. I don't know exactly what he finished, but he would definitely been in my starting lineup every single week, and he would have been a guy that probably would have started the season on waivers or in the last few rounds of your draft. You could have picked him up. So the guy
Yep.
is definitely the most talented in that running back room, in my opinion. I don't think it would be anything for him to really just take off with the rushing duties in Kansas City and let Andy Reid use Clyde and his dynamic, passing game out of the backfield, and kind of throwing Derek McKinnon for a break, Pacheco for a break. So I'm really excited to see how Andy Reid uses Ronald Jones. If he's going to use him as a workhorse or if he's just going to use him for third down, third and shorts or goal line duties or red zone, whatever the case may be. I feel like he's really going to use him because he knows he's a hidden gem and he most likely got him for dirt cheap.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you think it'll be like a pretty heavy like committee then?
I'm not. I like say I'm not entirely sure. I do feel like he's gonna use his backs. I feel like you're gonna see more. You're gonna see mostly Ronald Jones taking all the rushing duties, Clyde taking those receiving duties. I'm probably gonna say with as much as they pass, it'll be close to a 50-50 split if I
Okay.
had to guess. I don't think that's too far off from what they're going to do because, like I say, with Ronald Jones taking all the rushing duties and they pass a lot anyways, just with Patrick Mahomes, I think that's going to leave a lot of opportunities for Clyde to get onto the field. So I think they do come to somewhat of a split.
Interesting. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I have him in a couple spots in multiple dynasty leagues. So when I saw about the signing in in Kansas City, my eyes kind of got wide. I was like, ooh,
Hmm.
like I like that, but he has just been like a very mixed expectation,
Hmm.
sometimes hitting, sometimes not hitting, kind
Yeah,
of
you
one
kind of
you want to
hold
pull
those
your hair
hopes.
out.
You hold on to him, hope he just lands in a good position or something, or he repeats his 2020 year with Tampa Bay, because he does.
Right,
He
right, right.
could. He could just very well, if he just shows out, Andy Reid will run with him and let him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so it's just another wave of excitement that we have,
Hmm.
and if it doesn't work out, I may just be just officially out now. So I don't know. I don't know. It's just in that offense, you want players in that offense,
Hmm.
So he's a very tricky one for me, but definitely a good one to watch. Hopefully, we get a little clarity on how he gets used in the preseason. I don't know,
Hmm.
but then again, you don't want these guys to be playing too much either. You just hate those preseason injuries, and everything else
Oh gosh.
for them, but also for our fantasy leagues, of course, too. But you especially hate it for the players themselves. Just this week, there's been a couple that have popped up, like
Hmm.
Tim Patrick and stuff. You just hate that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Torn ACL out for the season. It's terrible. But yeah, so the free agency is obviously one way to build a roster, and then the other real obvious way to build a roster is through the NFL draft, the
Hmm.
spectacle that it is these days. It's awesome. I love it. So just going to review the draft class here, and then would love to hear your thoughts on all things that they selected here. So round one, pick 21, they trade up with the Patriots. They select cornerback Trent McDuffie. They gave up picks 29, 94, and 121 to make that jump up to 221 from 29 for the cornerback who I think could have gone much earlier than that. Just interesting. It was a good spot to get him at. So
Hmm.
they went up and got their guy. Still in round one, pick 30, they selected the defensive end, George Karlaftis. Great value there as well. Round two, pick 54, wide receiver Skye Moore. Round two again, pick 62, defensive back Brian Cook. Round three, linebacker Leo Chenal. Rounds five and seven, offensive lineman Kennard, cornerback Jalen Watson, running back Isaiah Pacheco, who you referenced a moment ago. Talk about him in a minute. And then defensive back Najee Johnson. Now, Pacheco's an interesting one. He actually had a better 40 time and speed score than Brees Hall. Now, of course, he doesn't have as strong a draft capital or as much production. He played at Rutgers
Hmm.
and everything else. So a lot of the time they're playing from behind and things like
Yep.
that. But a very intriguing player. Um, what did you think about this draft class? And did you have a favorite or least favorite pick?
I honestly thought they grabbed great value everywhere they picked, all through the draft. Like you were saying, Pacheco in the late rounds. The guy was the fastest running back in the combine this year.
That's
And
right.
so the fact that they just picked him up and threw him at the bottom of the depth chart, and they see a couple of games this year where maybe they're either blown out or down, well, whatever the case may be, and he gets in, gets those reps, and gets some work with a top tier offense. uh who knows what, and he may not do anything in Kansas City, but after his rookie contract's up, the guy is a speedster. We've seen some speedsters make themselves very valuable in the fantasy world. As far as favorites go, I would probably say Karlaftis. I had Karlaftis going in like the early first round. I
Yeah.
did a little mock draft myself of the first round. I had him going like the fifth pick or something like that. Skye Moore was another one you were mentioning. People that have went after him were like Velus Jones, Jalen Tolbert, David Bell. I think that is excellent value for considering the rest of his draft class that uh, got picked ahead of him. Like I say, let's see. I mean, I would have liked to see them, like I said earlier, kind of go more with a veteran approach to the secondary on defense and kind of use that other first to go for, uh, who knows? I don't know. They could have got another wide receiver early on, or that filled another hole elsewhere. But nonetheless, as you were saying, value all over the board in this draft class with the way they picked. Regardless, I'm not the slight preference, but the way it turned out, I can't complain at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the Skye Moore pick to me was just unbelievable because a lot of people had a first round grade on him. He very easily could have gone to the
Hmm.
Chiefs at 21. Like they probably could have jumped up, and if it was Skye Moore at the pick, it wouldn't have shocked me, or at
Hmm.
30. And they get him at 54. Um Making him, this is nuts. I recounted this like 3 times. It was like the 2000 like election. I recounted it like a zillion times. The seventh wide receiver selected in the second round, the 13th wide receiver overall.
Oh
I
my
think that is
gosh.
just
Wow.
insane to me. A guy who could have easily gone in the first round, but again, a lot of those second round picks to me were like a bit like whimsical, right? Like the
Hmm.
Patriots taking Tyquan Thornton. I like Alec Pierce as a player. I wasn't expecting a second round draft capital for him
Hmm.
with the Colts. Oh geez, I guess Christian Watson, an argument could be made there at the
Hmm.
top of the second for sure. It's a
Yeah, I
good
don't know.
landing spot for him.
You said 13 wide receivers before him, and I'm thinking of all the mock drafts that were in the rookie mocks that were in with the IDP guys, and Sky Moore's consistently in the back half of the first. That said, there's literally can't be 13 wide receivers ahead of him in most mock drafts, so definitely a great value with that pick.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of remarkable. Six wide receivers went in the top 18 picks, and then the next wide receiver taken was Christian Watson at the top of the second, and then all those guys went, and then the Chiefs get Sky Moore. It just was like a layup. It was just like
Hmm.
perfect,
Yep.
because again, he could have gone to them 20 picks earlier. It was
Uh-huh.
just amazing. So that was awesome. That really got my attention. So he just was one of those guys that a lot of people really liked, and then like he really went from like the second round clear into the first round of
Hmm.
like the rookie draft season for Dynasty. And I think again, talented player in a fantastic offense. That's what you want to bet on, especially in the back half of the first round. Really can't get too much safer than that. So
Hmm.
very intrigued by him. Um, Glad that you liked the overall draft. Some years you just really like scratch your head, and some years you really
Hmm.
like what the team does. I know that better than anyone with the Eagles. Sometimes they nail it, and sometimes you're just like, oh, not again. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So
Yep.
I was glad. I'm glad that the Chiefs were able to get good values where they were picking, and glad that you liked it as well. Any thoughts on the undrafted free agents? That's a subject that sometimes gets a little bit overlooked. I do happen to like to track that. Just it's just
Hmm.
interesting. Like the NFL draft always surprises me. There's always players that go way earlier than I would have thought, and like who am I, right? Then there's some
Hmm.
players who just go way later that are just very shocking to me. One, especially this year, was the quarterback Sam Howell, who went to Washington at the top of the fifth
Hmm.
round. I think that again, see how he does. That potentially could be just a phenomenal steal, but the
Hmm.
undrafted free agents sometimes are very shocking. Like, oh, I'm surprised that guy didn't get picked up or whatever. Could be like medical red flags and things like this.
Hmm.
Any thoughts on who the Chiefs signed as undrafted free agents?
I was most excited about Justin Ross with
Yes.
Andy Reid, and like I referred to what I was talking about earlier with him finding a role for all of his players. I could only imagine what kind of role he could give somebody who maybe shouldn't play every down, but somebody that's far too talented not to play if he's been cleared. So
Right.
I feel I was so excited to see. I don't know if he would have carved out anything this year, but it would have been fun to watch at least for sure. And I think he's could develop into a hell of a wide receiver. Again with those injury woes, and you kind of hesitate. I personally am watching him, and if it were me in that position, I agree. You want to play. That's just his life's work, I'd imagine. And so to not be able to play, yeah, I would just hope that he wouldn't, like say, he wouldn't be out there every down. But I do hope for his sake that he is able to carve out his own decent role with either the Chiefs or whoever, somebody in the league. I would like to see that for him. And also
Yeah.
Crum, like you said, you mentioned to me, Crum was another one. He's behind, Henny and Mahomes. He's got two great quarterbacks to watch as he, just kind of watches from the sidelines this year and in the future, however long he hangs out. But definitely two vets to learn from.
Absolutely. Yeah. The thing about Justin Ross is his talent level, clear first round caliber wide receiver. Obviously, he wasn't, and then didn't get drafted because of those medical red flags, which I think is fair. I still, again, in the sixth, seventh round, it wouldn't have shocked me if the team just like took a chance on him. Now, obviously, at this
Hmm.
point, he has been put on season-ending IR, but again, to just let him heal up. Patrick Mahomes is going to be there until he's like 38 or whatever,
Uh,
you know. Uh, so yeah, I
yeah.
mean, nothing to lose. You know what I mean? You have a guy who just has talent out the wazoo. He was the one player I was like aggressively watching to see where he was signing. And then the Chiefs, I'm like, oh, that is perfect, just because, yeah, I'm such a
Hmm.
fan of the player. But, he had that neck injury, or the
Hmm.
neck condition, which required a pretty intense surgery. And then he had the foot injury because he was able to come back from that. So I guess maybe he's not all the way back from
Hmm.
that foot injury that
Right.
prevented him from participating fully at the combine, and everything else. But yeah, very excited. I mean, again, we're talking about
Hmm.
undrafted free agents. They actually may never even see the field beyond like preseason action. You know what I mean? Like in the future, but
Hmm.
still to have those guys like waiting in the wings that have that kind of
Yep.
upside is phenomenal. And Dustin Crum, he's someone who I put on my list as well because
Oh
again,
yeah.
playing at Kent State, or I think it's Kent State, he just was a really interesting prospect in terms of his rushing ability and overall production. So it's not all that shocking, it's not all that surprising he didn't get drafted. But again, lot of potential there, in his physical traits in a fantastic system. Like Andy
Hmm.
Reid is that quarterback whisperer. He can learn behind Mahomes and Henny,
Hmm.
who's a solid vet
Oh
in
yeah.
his own right. So again, just most teams you just kind of gloss over the list, say, whatever, like we'll see what happens. But those
Hmm.
two really got me juiced up. So glad that we are in agreement there. Um, so basically, what we're going to do now is take a look ahead at the 2022 season. After reviewing the Chiefs' schedule, Axton, what do you think are realistic expectations in terms of a win-loss record?
I don't know. I was kind of going through and hesitantly because there's teams that we will inevitably lose to that we definitely shouldn't. We always struggle with the Broncos in years past when we never should have. The Raiders give us fits. The Chart, we usually split with teams like that. Last year, I'd say last few years we've done much better. But given the changes and things, I don't know if I expect like a deep postseason run. I think that they have the talent capability to make a playoff, make some sort of playoff run. I don't think like a 11-6, 12-5 record would be crazy. I think that
Yeah,
it's definitely feasible for them to be able to make the playoffs, make it. It just all kind of depends on how everybody adjusts to the new system without Tyreek and people stepping up to the plate. Juju having been, what, 4 years removed from his top eight season and really having to take on a lead role and teach and coach Skye Moore and those younger guys and just take that lead. Now, I think that uh, Kelsey, I do think I would like uh, Tyreek and Kelsey. I'm glad that they kept Kelsey. And the reason I say that is because Kelsey's going to give Mahomes that security blanket of sorts
yeah,
in this adjustment period. He's going to have somebody, somebody reliable to throw the ball to that's going to get, he might flirt around 80 or 100 yards a game. And, if that's what he's got to do, that's what he's got to do. And they'll make it work because they just got the talent that can really pick up if things aren't, if his. Blanket isn't there. But like I say, I think it all just kind of depends on how they mesh. Uh, but I hesitantly guess probably a 11-6, or what was it? 11-6, 12-5 kind of record
Gotcha.
personally.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just that whole division has completely been revamped, right? Like you look at just the Raiders, they bring in Josh McDaniels, they bring in Devontae
Hmm.
Adams, already from a team that just snuck into the playoffs, but still, um, that could be a scary team to watch out for. A lot of good defensive talent over there as well. Then the Broncos,
Hmm.
that they bring in Russell Wilson. Well, all of a sudden, you could consider them to be contenders in the division at least. I think that Russell Wilson just makes that kind of an impact. To be honest, I'm such a big fan of his.
Well, absolutely.
Just
I mean, the team really only needed a quarterback. They've had a solid defense, and they've had good receivers, and
that's
have a
right.
good running back, and they have had good tight ends. They just don't have any. I think I just put out an article on Cortland Sutton, and I referenced the fact that they have started 12 quarterbacks. The Broncos have since Peyton Manning left. Even a wide receiver started a game in 2020.
Hinton, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yes. So
What was
this
that number
with
again
Russell
of
Wilson,
quarterbacks?
12 starting quarterbacks since what?
Whoa.
When did Peyton Manning retire? What,
Um,
like 2014? Does that sound too recent?
hmm. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, if you want to look that up, I'm very curious because they went through the very short-lived Paxton Lynch
2015.
era.
Yeah,
2015.
so
Okay, gotcha.
2016 to 2021, they've had 12 starting quarterbacks.
Wow. So they're like the Browns of the West, like that.
Yeah,
That's
really.
insane. But no, I mean,
Hmm.
I just think Russell Wilson just brings that just lifts the entire roster up. And
Hmm.
then with the Chargers, if you still got Justin Herbert, a lot of those pieces on the offense are remaining. Then they bring in a lot of defensive talent,
Hmm.
Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson. Like
Hmm.
that's crazy.
Yep,
Um, so it's very interesting. I think it's very possible that a couple teams from that division do get into the playoffs. Um,
I agree.
I think that the Chiefs still have potential to win the division. I think that they can make the playoffs. I think the Chargers do take a step forward. But then again, it's like these games this year are going to be just
Oh,
pure
they're gonna
popcorn.
be.
It's just going to be amazing. Like
Oh,
forget the
absolutely.
new like Marvel movie that's coming out. I want to watch
Right.
these games.
Oh my God, I know.
Um,
Yep. It's a definitely gonna be a a crazy AFC West. I mean, like you said, my guess was hesitant. I know they have the potential to win the division, but hesitantly, I think 11-6 probably. But no, that division's definitely gonna put up a big fight. They're gonna be a thorn in our side, that's for sure.
because I think they have the edge at head coach. Sometimes when there's newness in a team, like with the Raiders and a new head coach and all that,
Hmm.
sometimes it
Yeah,
just
you're right.
the full potential doesn't get realized year one. But
Hmm.
then again, with Devontae Adams coming in, that just opens up a whole nother
Oh
uh,
my.
aspect of the offense and how to game plan for that. So I don't know. I think because the Chiefs still have that foundation of Reed and Mahomes, I think that could still be likely, but I don't know. Uh, I just really like the Chargers too, and
Hmm.
see what Brandon Staley can do in year two. Oh my goodness! And how about that that last game of the season between like the Raiders and Chargers? Like
Hmm.
I just think like every game could potentially be like that game.
Oh, a blowout.
Oh no,
No,
like
not
but
a
not
blowout.
like in
A
but
high
not in
scoring
the
game.
deep.
That's going to be
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah. Right, right,
high,
right.
yeah. Yeah, not a blowout. Sorry, like that. Yeah, they're just going to be very high scoring games,
Shootout,
high
shootout. Yeah,
octane. Yeah,
yeah.
shoot. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know if it's
gonna.
gonna go that deep into overtime every single game, but still, oh my goodness, like that is just kind of is what I'm expecting to see
Mm-hmm.
out of this division. So I think it's a really the most exciting division in the NFL without question. But yeah, I mean, I'll be very curious to see what comes out of that. I mean, and for years to come, it'll
Mm-hmm.
be the next couple of years. It's gonna be it's probably gonna be like this. So yeah, a lot of fun there. But you do think that they can make the playoffs, though.
Oh
You
yeah,
think 11
I
and
think.
6, 12 and 5 will be enough to get
Yeah.
them in there? Yeah.
Yep, I think they'll have enough to get there, but I'm not sure if they'll have quite the juice or the chemistry among everybody new to quite really overcome your Rams and your Bengals and those really tough teams. But I definitely think a playoff push is within the realm. So.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, no, I think that's very reasonable. Like the first thing you said was you think they'll be successful, you think they'll get in, but maybe not as deep of a run
Mhm.
as the last couple of years. So yeah, no, I think that's pretty good wisdom for sure. So at the end of the day, we do want this show to be a fantasy football show. I do enjoy the typical regular football talk as well, but we're gonna shift complete gears now to just pure fantasy. So I'll leave it up to you. We're looking for players on the Chiefs to target or fade at projected cost. You can go dynasty, you can go redraft, you can throw in some IDPs if you want. Curious about your thoughts on that, but we will start with offensive players to target at projected cost. So who do you like?
At the wide receiver 38 price tag, I've been going Juju in a lot of our mocks and startup drafts, and then Mace's redrafts. He's been, I think, an excellent target for dirt cheap in the seventh round. I mean, you can get him. Sometimes you might even be able to snatch him up for, if you're wide receiver heavy, you snatch him up for, first in from the bench. And even still, he's probably going to hop into your starting lineup a number of weeks. So I really like him. Like I said, he had that 2018 season where he did place top eight. I think a season or two later, he was a wide receiver 17 when he finished. Uh, so that might be a bit of a stretch for him to get to that top 10 but I think the top 20 definitely within is reasonable, more than reasonable, especially with Patrick Mahomes, and he's lining up alongside Kelsey, who's running up the seams and really. Uh, and then again with MVS running behind defenses. Uh, Another one for me. Now I like MVS, but best ball. I
Oh,
probably
sure.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
going and reaching for MVS. Uh, Early by any means for a redraft or dynasty. But again, he's the guy's like 6'4", 220. He's huge. He adds a tremendous size. He's going to be able to go up and get those passes that if Patrick Mahomes just gets in trouble and he needs to launch it down the field, he's going to be one that's going to be go up and contend for those passes. And I like him for best ball. He's going to have those games where he might catch a long pass or two for a 60-yard touchdown and score you a quick, easy 15, 25 points if he just goes off one game. Uh, so I like him in the later rounds. Again, with Ronald Jones would be another one I kind of like in the later rounds. He's going. I don't even know where is he? He's like RB 40 something.
Well, I think he's pretty much in the double digit rounds, and you're kind of are in like getting into like elite like handcuff
47, yeah.
territory.
Yeah,
Okay,
oh
yeah, so
yeah.
you're looking at handcuffs at that point,
Yeah,
and
that's way late in drafts and deep leagues.
so a great lottery ticket, right? Yeah, so
Absolutely, yeah,
because I'm with
yeah.
you 100% there. It was interesting. I think earlier in the show you compared MVS's role to Deshaun Jackson's role in
Hmm.
Philadelphia. I love that, especially for best ball specifically.
Hmm.
To try to guess when it's going to happen
Yeah.
gonna make you nauseous. Um,
Hmm.
but I do like that call, especially for best ball. You just have him there. You don't have to worry about when to play him. But if it happens, it happens. I mean, he
Hmm.
might be an interesting choice for like DraftKings or FanDuel. I'm sure he'll be like a inexpensive option. I actually don't do a lot of that. But I
Hmm.
mean, like if you're looking for an edge, a little upside there, I think that would be a good place to look.
Hmm.
See how it goes, of course. So I like that. Mine for Dynasty. I'm still am well in on Mahomes. If I'm doing a startup today, Mahomes will probably be my quarterback three off the board.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a pretty close call for me. It's a pretty tight tier as far as I'm concerned between Allen or Herbert. They're kind of, you kind of interchange
I
them at one or
agree.
two.
Mm-hmm.
But Mahomes, I mean, you don't really want to overthink it, right? Just as
Mm-hmm.
safe as can be. I don't. I think for the long term, the loss of Tyreek Hill might not be so devastating. I am a little worried about that, but I think if it's dynasty, you just have him for the long haul. I think you'll be fine, especially week
Mm-hmm.
to week. So I'm very still into Mahomes, and then Skye Moore is a wide receiver. I'm very interested in. Um, Now, again, every draft is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if he is being drafted after or around Juju, I'll just take like the younger guy. That might just be like the shiny new object syndrome
Mm-hmm.
of me that I suffer from. But very intrigued by him. And then redraft, I I was gonna say I was in on CEH as if I could draft him as a flex option. I'm in the middle of a redraft, slow draft right now, and he was taken in the fifth round. So that is not where I would be. And this is like a single quarterback
No,
draft.
that's a
That
that's
is
a
that is not where
reach.
I would have taken. So okay, so we're on the same page there.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
he can fall in my lap as like as
Mm-hmm.
my running back three, and I'm already happy with what I have at RB1 and RB2, then that's cool with me. But if I leave a draft with him as my RB2, I don't feel great about that.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
but it is just the ever tempting upside that comes with a potential running back in that offense, especially who he was as a player at LSU. I mean, I just the comparison that just had me smitten was
Mm-hmm.
was Brian Westbrook.
Mm-hmm.
What he did in Philadelphia. I still think CH could do that potentially, but he just needs to get that. Well, I mean, he has to get the kind of workload that Westbrook had as well, uh, way back when, obviously. But so just ever tempting, and now the price, as far as I'm concerned, is much more justifiable than it was
Mm-hmm.
when he was a rookie, than it was even in his
Oh,
sophomore year.
yeah,
So
no
now
doubt.
that so some of that shine is off of him now, I think
Mm-hmm.
he could be a very interesting like post type sleeper to a certain
Mm-hmm.
degree.
Yeah.
I know the term sleeper kind of gets thrown around, but I think to a certain degree you could consider him a post type sleeper.
If
Um,
he, like you said, if he falls to you, I mean, he may not be my preference, but if everybody else sleeps on him and he's gonna fall to me, and he's right there, kind of at a tier break. There's only maybe a couple of other players that are really gonna have a big role in their offenses at where he's at. What is it like the wide? It's like the running back 20. It's like the late 20s, running back 30 or something is kind of where he's being ranked at or being picked up. That's his ADP on IDP guys.
oh,
So
perfect. Okay. Yeah,
yep.
so to like decide between him or like Miles Sanders or like Damian Harris,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I would still be pretty tempted to go CEH there.
Hmm.
Although I would say like 8 out of 10 times, there's still that small percentage chance of me being an Eagles fan. I still want the Miles Sanders to live up to his potential. If the Eagles just want to use him the way I think he should be used, but I can't control that. So I would say like 8 out of 10 times I'm taking CEH over Sanders, but that is like an interesting debate to kind of see how that plays out there.
It sounds like
Um,
we're kind of both a little more out on our own home team running backs here, going for the opposite. Because I think if you put me in that spot and you talk about people I'm fading, as I
sure,
imagine you're about to get to. I would personally probably fade CEH versus Miles Sanders or your
there you go.
Damian
Okay.
Harris and let's see who I think. Oh, AJ Dillon, Kareem Hunt. I think are people that I'd much rather have or feel more comfortable or
Yeah.
secure in those picks personally, anyways. And I'm more of a very hesitant drafter. So if I got two options and one that is going to be more reliable or consistent for me, I'm more likely going to go for that versus that sleeper candidate because CEH is going to be more than involved in the offense. It's just kind of one of those situations where I'm just like, I don't even want the head. I avoid people that cause me headaches during the season. You have those players that inevitably do, but if I can avoid one from the start, I was like, I'd rather just let him go off for somebody else. I don't
Well,
I don't
and
have
they
that issue.
they call it like the running back dead zone for a reason, right?
Hmm.
So
It's
what
right there.
I typically want to have at least every draft is different, obviously, but I want to get two running backs usually in the first 5 rounds. And those wide receivers that are going in the range of CEH, Miles Sanders, Damien, I want those wide receivers 10 out of 10 times. If
Hmm.
it's like a stake draft, if it's an auction or a salary cap draft, it's a little bit of a different massaging of player targeting, right?
Hmm.
But if it's just like a plain old snake, I want Bateman. I want even Tyler Lockett. I would probably
Hmm.
would want over some of those guys. That's just me. I just love that tier of wide receivers, especially because I typically am missing out on some of the top
Hmm.
guys. Because I want the running backs at the top. Because the drop off after a certain tier of running backs is too significant compared to the drop off at
Oh.
wide receiver, where I'm very happy taking wide receivers all the way through, even like Jacoby Myers.
Hmm.
I'm very happy to get him over like I don't even know right now. But either way, the point is I like the wide receivers where those running backs are going. However, I do see a scenario where I would be very in on getting CEH as a flex option type, but as a fade, I completely understand
Yeah,
that.
he's right there on the fence.
Um,
All of those right there are kind of on the fence of,
yeah,
you could argue that they could have a good season. You could argue that they'd be one to fade. So
right.
I don't think you can go wrong in your thoughts there.
For sure, for sure. My general dynasty fade, if I'm doing a startup today, would be Travis Kelsey. Obviously, if you have him on a contending team, I am more than happy to hold him for his
Hmm.
career. Just let that ride out, right?
Yep.
Um, but I mean, he's still to me, unless it's like a tight end premium situation, that's another whole monkey wrench. But second round in a startup, well, I guess if it's super flex, maybe like second, third round. I
Hmm.
just I just don't want any part of that. Even though obviously he is a difference maker, I just am typically aiming for more youth in my startups, just more of a balanced approach. But again, if you go for the win now in year one, and you
Hmm.
get a decent, prize back, you can pay for the next 6 years or whatever,
That's
and
right.
and you kind of sit on that. So I definitely understand it, just not the typical direction I would go. And then as far as redraft is concerned, I'm generally going to be fading much of the wide receivers in the Chiefs offense.
Hmm.
Although I have been warming up to Juju as like a wide receiver 3 flex option. But like MVS for the reasons you said, a little variance, a little unpredictable on when
Hmm.
those spike weeks are coming, and to set the lineup with him in, I don't know if I'll ever will feel great about it, unless there are just certain circumstances where, say, he is just the clear, he's getting, 7+ targets a game. It's just very consistent
Hmm.
with that. Then that's another story, but if it's this like spike week, 10 target game, then three, then four target, I don't. Yeah. So you
Hmm.
said best ball is probably the best way to go, but in lineup setting weeks, I'm probably going to be steering clear of the wide receivers there. Just kind of keeping an eye out for them on
Hmm.
waivers, though. I would not
Yep.
be. I would not shy away from aiming to acquire them by trade, like in the middle of the season.
Hmm.
I just would probably. I'm just thinking like most likely scenarios. I'm not going to want to come away with some of them, but I would target Kelsey in redraft. I would target
Hmm.
Mahomes. Depends. I mean, I'm usually like a late round QB kind of a guy, but and like the Scott Fish Bowl, I was able to get Mahomes at 104. I thought he would have been gone by 3.
Uh-huh.
Um, but still just fell right into my lap. I did not hesitate. Like Mahomes, that's done. That's easy. Of course,
Yep.
then that
Smash
is super
pick. Yep.
flex. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so there are scenarios where that can happen, but generally the fades would be the wide receivers for redraft and then Kelsey
Hmm.
for dynasty. Unless you're a contender, I think it's fine to be aggressive and try to acquire him to get you over the top. But
Hmm.
startup
Yeah.
wise is more what I was thinking. Probably not going to come away with him in a startup, but yeah. Yeah. So Anyone else you wanted to touch on as far as fades go, or
No, I think the like you said it, Kelsey probably in your dynasty startups. And then my only other would be CEH. I'm just he's
gotcha, right?
like you with Kelsey probably for or like anybody with Kelsey or you and me anyways. In a dynasty startup is just probably one I'm gonna go to the wide receivers at the same position like you were saying, or just kind of pivot elsewhere. Probably somebody I'm not really gonna kind of one that's gonna have to prove it to me before I pick him up. Not one I'm gonna take that
Yeah.
risk on.
And it's always like that extra little stress of it being like your favorite team too. Like I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm more nervous having Eagles players on my
Mm-hmm.
roster because it's like
Yep.
it's like a double whammy. If they're not playing well in real life, they're not playing well. It's just I just like get
Mm-hmm.
in my own head, you know.
Yep.
Or if they
I'm
get
kind of
hurt,
the same way.
yeah, then it's like a deeper double whammy, you know, if they're
Uh-huh.
not contributing on the out on the real field or on in the fantasy lineup. But oh man, yeah. So it is this. It was a weird thing that I've had to get over the years. Like I just never ever wanted to like draft Cowboys players. I just didn't want them. And like for a while, there was a lot of really good like Marion Barber, like Tony Romo back in
Mm-hmm.
the day, like obviously Des Bryant. I mean, at this point of those years, I was mature enough to just think like, okay, I just want the fantasy points. Like that's fine.
I was
But like
gonna
my
say you
first two
had to
years
get in on
playing,
the DeMarco Murray days. Oh, those were
absolutely.
fun.
But like in my very early years, my like Eagles fandom was just so high that like I just did not want to have any inkling of wanting to root for a cowboy
Mm-hmm.
player success. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is like that weird thing of being a fan that can trickle in. But at this point, I am still a big fan of my team, but obviously at the end of the day, when it comes to fantasy, you just have to be completely objective. You know,
Uh-huh.
just whoever can contribute, whoever can bring in points, you know. But then again, I was like a early teenager when I
Uh-huh.
started playing, so you know,
Right.
the maturity wasn't quite there yet. But now all you want is the points, right? But
Mm.
yeah, it's funny.
Well, since I started watching football seriously right about the same time that I was getting into fantasy.
Oh,
So
of
to
course. Yep.
me, it kind of started out like, I was always a fan, but I never really, uh, was too diehard. I guess, I've always been a fan, but I'm never one that's like, oh, I got to go to all the games this year. I'm gonna watch the games as they come on, and I'm always gonna root for my team. Uh, but
Yeah, you're just more grounded, like in your
but
fandom, where
yeah,
every loss you
exactly.
weren't mad until Tuesday, you know, and that kind of
hmm
thing, you know.
it helped me remain objective, like you were saying. So I had more player preferences, and I was a fan of players more so than teams overall. But everybody's got to have that hometown team or that team that you root for. So
Yeah,
and naturally being surrounded in Chiefs Kingdom by a whole bunch of red, I don't have a whole lot of a choice. But
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so
My my wife has some cousins who live out in Missouri and they're big
mm,
Chiefs fans. So when the Chiefs played the Eagles last year, they sent like a little like selfie of like him and like his wife and kids in their Chiefs
mm,
gear. And then they got this big smile on their face because they're like they got Patrick Mahomes. Like they know they're
mhm.
gonna win. And I'm like, good luck, you know, like I hope we
Uh,
lose by only 20, you know. But yeah, so it's just a fun like, and when the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl, I was like texting him. I was like, I hope you guys do well, you know, because I'm
mhm.
still like a fan of Andy Reid. I just can't help it. But yeah. So Axton, I think we hit it. I think we nailed it. We have very good expectations for the Chiefs for both real life and for fantasy football purposes. Appreciate you coming on and
Absolutely.
appreciate your insight with with,
Mhm.
with with the Chiefs team. So what we're going to do now is just want you to remind people where they can find you, and then just plug anything you got coming out or anything you'll be working on this season or in the future.
Well, you can find me at the IDP guys .org website. I have an author page there. You can check out any of my articles there. I've kind of dabbled into a few podcasts and whatnot. And if you're not already go ahead and subscribe and get in the Discord chat. I am always in the
Absolutely.
Discord chat answering questions and interacting with our members and my fellow writers and the staff and everybody that's in there. It's a great time. It's not you got access 24/7 to all your fantasy football questions, and we don't only talk fantasy football. There's side chats for whatever. I've found myself making friends left and right just being active in the Discord chat. So hop on over and check out everything the IDP guys have to offer.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I just want to echo that the Discord as part of the subscription is just a fantastic time. There's more channels in it than I would have ever imagined. It's pretty fantastic, but very active in offering trade advice and start sit advice. It really and it has, like you said, you do become friends with the people who take
Mhm.
advantage of that, and it is just a good time just to kind of chop it up just between ourselves too, but also the subscribers, of course, who we ultimately are there to try to help and walk alongside of with their questions. So, but
Mhm.
yeah, so Axton, thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it. Best of luck to you and your fantasy teams, but of course your Kansas City Chiefs.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
so appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Best of luck to you as well and your Eagles and the Creator League.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we got a little bit of a rivalry going there in that division, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, best of luck, everybody, with your teams, and keep climbing.